Holy cow! My name's Dave Whipple and you're watching Bush Radical. And we are getting absolutely blasted with freezing rain. There's no question about it. There won't be school tomorrow. And if the power stays on, it'll pretty much be a miracle. Because it's raining sideways and it's freezing on everything. So I can't imagine a better time to talk about getting prepared for the power to go out. Let's go around and take care of the stuff that we need to take care of right now so we're ready when the power shuts off, because it's in the mail. Brooke here is filling up a 5-gallon jug of drinking water. It's like a water cooler style jug, and this is probably, you know, enough drinking water for 4 people for 2 days, conservatively. Get some bacon out of the freezer. We're also making sure that we fill up every single one of our water bottles. Any kind of a water container we're topping off, just to make sure that, you know, for as far as drinking water goes, we're covered. Fill up everything you got. Another thing we're doing is going through all of the headlamps, making sure that all of our headlamps at least got decent batteries, and we've got replacement batteries. Probably should have a headlamp for everybody in the family, because everybody's going to want one. If you've got a generator and you're going to run it during the power outage, you better make sure it runs. So now's a good time to take your generator out, give it a try, make sure it works. Well, my generator's not running, so there's something I need to take care of. Alright, so my generator didn't start. It's a Honda 2000, it's brand new. The gas is a little bit old, but it should still be fine. The one problem I see with these generators all the time is whatever water is in the fuel, and there's always water in the fuel, it will separate and settle out to the bottom, and it will be the first thing that ends up in the carburetor, and it always goes to the bottom of the float bowl. So if you have a generator that you haven't ran and it won't start, that's the first place to check. First thing you want to do is locate your carburetor float bowl. Now right here's the float bowl on this Honda. It actually has a plastic line on it. It's very handy. And you can see it has a drain screw right here at the very bottom. So what I'm going to do here is just take the screwdriver and open up the valve at the bottom of this float bowl and let the water that's collected in the bottom of the float bowl drain out. Now once I'm sure that all the water is drained out of the float bowl, I'll close the valve on the bottom and fire the generator up. The last thing we have to do is just make sure that it runs before we have to count on it. I'm going to make sure it's choked, turn it on. Make sure the vent on the cap is open. Perfect, we're in business. Now some houses have a breaker panel that's set up to interface with the generator. So when the power goes out, you fire your generator up and you basically power your house with the generator. That's a very good system, it's a good backup, but if you hook one up yourself, you have to have a disconnect that disconnects the power grid from your distribution panel when the generator is hooked up. You have to have that. Otherwise, what you're doing is you're powering your house, but you're also powering the line up the pole to the transformer that's on the pole. Linemen have been killed before because the power was out, but some homeowner had a generator feeding their house, which was also feeding the line to the pole, feeding the transformer, and then feeding the power lines itself. So if you have a system like that, make sure you have a disconnect that switches from the grid to your generator and disconnects the power line from the distribution panel. Now if you don't have a disconnect, you cannot hook your generator up to your panel and power your house. But you can still take an extension cord, run it underneath the window and into the house and watch the television or turn the radio on or use the stove or run your furnace or whatever you need to do. Now let's take a walk down here in the basement and we will take a look at something else. Alright, so this is the basement. Way down here in our dungeon of a basement, we have the sump crock. But the real beauty of it is it's basically a cistern. Now this is basically like a 20-gallon cistern here. You can see there's a little bit of sand and sediment in the bottom. In the event of a power outage, we've got about 20 gallons of water inside this catch basin, and it will fill up and refill as long as the groundwater's high, which is pretty much all winter. So as far as flushing toilets, this is a never-ending supply of just clean water for gray water purposes, for flushing toilets and stuff. Now you could either take the sump and the cover off. Take and submerge yourself a 5-gallon bucket. And get your water that way. Or you can take the pump's hose, go to the end of the hose and disconnect it. And then you can just use it as a basically a glorified garden hose. Then you can always take your 5-gallon bucket of water and flush your toilet as needed. Now if you're about to have a power outage, of course it's probably too late to think about installing a wood stove, because it's kind of a major thing. But there's nothing I can think of more reassuring during a power outage than having wood heat. Not everybody burns wood, of course, but if you're dependent on the grid, you know you're going to have power outages at some time. There's just no way around it. So if you don't have a generator, you can't run your furnace. It's always a good idea, if you want to be prepared, to have a wood stove in at least part of your house, maybe in a small addition living room or something. Something where you can at least heat part of the living area. You know, even a wood stove in a garage is better than freezing to death, because you can't get out and the power's out and you can't get your furnace to run. Not only is a wood stove going to work no matter what the power is doing, but if you have an electric range like we do, it's a fantastic place to cook. When the power goes out, the range goes off, but you can still do all the cooking you need right on the top of your wood stove. Another thing to think about is your cell phone. Make sure everybody's had a chance to charge their phones up. Once the power goes out, you might think, well, I've only got 5% left on my phone, but there's nowhere to plug it in. You can always plug it into your car if you have a charger adapter for your car. But it's just a good idea to make sure that's taken care of. Well, I think that's about it. We've got a generator in case we do need a little bit of power. We got our cell phones most of the way charged up. We've got every one of our containers for drinking water filled with drinking water. We've got the sump down in the basement for flushing toilets. We've got bacon out of the freezer, candles, headlamp batteries. We've got plenty of food, warm blankets. We've got a wood stove. So I think we're pretty much set up. But when you get ready for the power going out, it's best to overdo it. If you think it's going to be out for a day, make sure you've got a week's worth of water. Just prepare for the worst, because sometimes that's what we get. Thank you guys so much for watching Bush Radical. If you like this video, hit subscribe and share. And if you guys have picked up anything useful, I hope you pass this video on to a friend. My name's Dave Whipple, and thanks so much for watching Bush Radical. And be radical, eh? See you soon.